The Business of the Year Award is sponsored today by Valley Distributors. The Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year Award is given to an area business that exemplifies commitment to growth within the community through an expansion of workforce, major renovations, and foresight. They must have contributed to the overall well-being of our community.
Jaguar Management Group is comprised of a trio of enterprises in the Waterville area that include the operations of Champions at the Elm Plaza, the operation of the Silver Street Tavern restaurant, and residential property development and management. At the center of these enterprises is Charlie Jaguar, who prides himself on investing in the Waterville area and, more importantly, retention of longtime associates involved in these enterprises. Charlie is a true Watervillian. The family house of 70-plus years is located a mere 3 blocks from the Silver Street Tavern and less than a mile from Champions. Both of his parents were of Canadian descent, not that one wouldn't know by his nearly unpronounceable last name. He has 4 children, one of whom still resides in Waterville, while the other 3 have spread their wings. Charlie's first management position was as lead altar boy at the St. Francis Catholic Church. As in all French-Canadian families, there's always hope by the mother that one of the sons would become a priest. The thought that this might happen would bring tears to Charlie's mother's eyes. Needless to say, the happy tears never came, and his top position attained at the Catholic Church was to be lead altar boy. During the early years, there were 2 priorities. The first was family, and the second was the family business. His dad had 4 stores, and all the family members were expected to work, which was fine because they all wanted to work. It was fun. Charlie tells the story of being excused from school for a week in the 8th grade to oversee the Waterville Main Street store, as his parents were taking a long overdue vacation. So, for that week, he sported his dad's oversized tweed jackets and ties while guarding the family business, and had his first encounter with a dishonest cashier and experienced his first termination. Staying with the Catholic theme, Charlie attended Loyola, a Jesuit university in New Orleans. He had anticipated that his life might probably be spent in the Northeast, so he decided to take advantage of the travel experience. He graduated with a degree in mathematics after exploring several majors. As he finished school, the family business was taking off. With a 2-week break, instead of a hoped-for year of seeing the world, Charlie re-entered the family business. During the ensuing 10-year period, the small chain of 3 stores grew to 16. After what Charlie describes as a few stubbed toes and the complications of family partnerships, he took leave of the family business and set out on his own in the mid-'80s. In an effort to stay in the Waterville area and not relocate the family, Charlie looked for work locally and met with Charlie Ladd, a local entrepreneur who owned a variety of businesses. He was asked to come on board for a 6-month period to help reorganize some of the enterprises, one of which was the operation at Elm Plaza. After dust settled, Charlie brought the business within a year. The business was rebranded as Champions. During the 90s, he consulted and managed a group of restaurants in the D.C. area and later a chain of party goods stores in St. Louis. Tired of being on the road, Charlie focused on Champions and searched for other local opportunities. He started a physical therapy company that has since transitioned to a satellite physical therapy center for Inland Hospital. He also took a stab at building an internet provider company called Aerolink. The first was an outstanding success, and the latter was an utter failure. In 2010, he purchased a building at foreclosure, now home to Amici's Italian restaurant. He restored the second-story apartments and leased the restaurant space to his long-term employee at Champions, Mary Carpenito. Mary and her husband, Angelo, have now operated their business for 5 years. A year later, the Silver Street Tavern building was put up for auction, and Charlie was the reluctant high bidder. He resurrected the Silver Street Tavern name, and the business is now in its 4th year. At the time, he felt it was manifest destiny, as the building had become home to Jagear's footwear and clothing in the early 1900s, as evidenced by the multiple stained glass windows adorned with the ornate G on the facade of the building. During the past 3 years, the upper floor spaces of the building have undergone a complete historic rehabilitation and are home to 5 elegantly restored apartments and 6 office suites. As Charlie approached the end of his lease at Champions, he gave notice to the landlord that the business was no longer tenable, as too many capital expenditures were necessary and not within the scope that would make sense for a tenant. Landlord and tenant arrived at the conclusion that together they would be able to make it work. The Rosenthals committed to the needed capital expenditures, and Charlie agreed to manage the operation at Champions. The end result is that over 30 jobs were saved, and residents still have use of the many amenities that Champions has to offer. Mid-Maine Chamber President Kim Linloff adds, "It's personal to me that Charlie was able to team up with the Rosenthals to save Champions and its 30 employees. I paid for college working there with Charlie, and am grateful for the faith that he showed in me and the opportunity to develop management skills under his tutelage. Charlie is both entrepreneurial and bottom-line driven. He runs a tight ship, and that has led him to be successful. Charlie has always felt a sense of pride and responsibility for his community. He was a Rotarian for over 25 years and served as its president. He is a former board member of Mid-Maine Alliance for the Mentally Ill, serving with Mal Wilson. Charlie is also a former board member of the Boys and Girls Club of America, serving as its president in the early 90s. That board transitioned to the Alphon Youth Center, and he served as chief volunteer officer years later. The combined tenure on these 2 boards was over 20 years. Charlie has also served on the Waterville Main Street Board for 3 years and is incoming board chair. He currently sits on the newly formed Downtown Waterville Planning Committee Colby College has formed to invest, develop, and re-energize downtown Waterville. In spite of all the moving parts, Charlie says it's not all work and no play. He's an avid pilot, boater, and rides motorcycles while making family time a priority. Tonight, we recognize Charlie and the Jagear Management Group's commitment and contributions to the people of Mid-Maine. Please join us in recognizing the Jagear Management Group as the 2014 Business of the Year. One, two, three. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
Well, I'm glad I didn't forget my piece of paper or my glasses. So I think the least predictable thing that, because, you know, the Waterville history is pretty close, the thing that you might not have known about me was my position as lead altar boy. Might have been a little unpredictable also. So anyway, don't laugh, those of you who know me too much, okay? Anyway, I'm happy to accept this honor, but I'm accepting this honor on behalf of Jagear Management Group, and Jagear Management Group isn't just Charlie, it's a bunch of people. And you know, there are a lot of moving parts to a small business. Chamber of Commerce is about small businesses, and large, but a lot of smalls. And when you have 3 different enterprises that are all small businesses, you have 3 times the number of moving parts. So it takes a lot of wonderful people, talented people, in order to manage the moving parts. So I don't want to name a lot of names, but I have to name some names. So, you know, Champions, which was, had a near-death experience last August, was managed for 30 years with a group of people. And I just want to take a moment to name them. I have Renee Raymond sitting at my table over there, 25 years 25 years with me. And Lisa Lambert, a 20-year veteran as my membership director. And Jason Tardif, 16 years as my tennis director. 16, it went by fast. And we have Karen Thompson, who's a newbie, but she's often running really fast, so she's welcome. And then, I gotta say, my son Andre has been with me for 29 years, but that includes all the diaper days. But he's been at the club for a while, but we can't count all 29 because, again, that's how old he is. And then at Silver Street Tavern, just want to, I have the very, very talented Joe Plumstead as my chef, back of the house. And I have the very, very motivated and talented Andrea Shorty as my general manager. And then I also have to mention that, 30 years at Champions is Steve Sinclair and Darlene Ratty. They migrated from Champions to Silver Street, and between the two of them, they have a combined tenure of 49 years. So, and it's just a slight edge, one over the other, but, where do you hire a bartender and keep him for 25 years? It's just like, that's very good. And then I also have to give kudos one more time to Renee Raymond, who kind of manages our back office and keeps us appraised of the numbers so that we stay in business. And then we have, the property management thing kind of came, earlier and then later, and then culminated with the Silver Street Tavern historic rehabilitation. And I got to pay kudos to my buddy and 20-year veteran here, Mark McDonough, for working with me, and he's part of the property management team. And again, I got to pay kudos to Renee Raymond. So I know where my bread is buttered here. So there's a common thread, and I just want to give Renee Raymond the MVP award for Jaguar Management Group. And if I thought she could do public speaking, I'd invite her up, but it'd really piss her off. Okay. And then I guess I want to thank my friends for supporting me. And I have my former wife here, Gail, who deserves a free meal after all those years of putting up with me. So. And I would be remiss not to thank my dad for imparting to me and us his work ethic, his fairness with people, his love of retail, love of customer contact. And we were groomed at an early age for the type of businesses that I run. And my two siblings who live in town, Celine at Elm City Photo and Claire at Prime Cut, we're all doing the same thing. We hug the customer, try and provide satisfaction, and then try and make money doing it, So I don't want to go on too long here, but we had the close call with Champions, and I just want to say that it got so close that certain people were instrumental in helping us continue and save those jobs, and one of them was in hospital and John Dalton having the faith that we could really turn it around, and then also our ability to construct an arrangement with the Rosenthals that made sense for him and made sense for me and made sense for the 35 employees that were there. And everybody raised their hand when they said, hey, who wants to keep their job? Everybody raised their hand. So on a final note, I don't know whose water this is, but I'm gonna have some. I've had worse germs, I'm sure. On a final note, we live in a tough market. Central Maine is a guerrilla warfare for a small business. Our population, I grew up 2 blocks away from one business and 7 blocks away from the other business I have and 5 blocks away from the properties that I own. Our population has decreased from plus 20 to 15,000 people during the course of my life. Big box stores have arrived. Restaurant franchises have arrived. Fitness franchises have arrived. And when I was a kid, the supermarket, big box stores arrived, and I saw our businesses go sideways. If you have to prevail. So independence, we have to be on our game to compete. We have to earn the respect of the locals, and we have to earn their business. And and it's hard to do that. But on the other hand, if you patronize the franchises, you're getting a homogenized product. It's one franchise in Waterville, the same franchise in Lewiston. They're not going to differentiate themselves. And you can answer it. But the thing is that when you patronize local businesses, and I'm not saying mine, and don't patronize me if I don't earn it, but when you patronize a local business, the money stays in town. It doesn't go out of town on a wheelbarrow. And it's like Champions, people patronized me at Champions for 30 years, and I appreciate it, and I thank all my patrons. And the money went from Upper Main Street to Lower Main Street, and it went to to revitalize buildings that needed it, or that would have been another thrift store on Main Street. And I think it's important to do that. And stay local as much as you can. And my message is encourage others to stay local as much as you can. And we'll continue to try and keep running your business. Thank you.